The first word that comes to mind is pain. I think it takes pain to get to a point where you really get to know yourself.
How was that for you, like having a brother that had schizophrenia that had not been diagnosed?
Grew up in, and the lack of support, emotionally, physically, and protection as well. My dad came to France. He was working a low income earning job. My mom was a cleaner. So we were always trying to make ends meet. I'm separated from my daughter. I haven't seen her in months. I'm not spiritual. I'm not religious at all. I'm engaging in a lot of unhealthy coping mechanisms. And I wake up that morning and I look at myself in the mirror and I feel disgusted by myself. You know, when I started my Islamic studies, my teacher said something that really changed my mindset in many fields. He said, don't rely on yourself. The number one thing that stops women or anyone from starting something is self-doubt. When you remove this idea of like, I can't do it, and you replace it with Allah will make it happen. I rely on Him, not on my ability to do things. I rely on His generosity and His power.
I am so excited to bring to you Soumaya, aka the Healed Sister, certified personal development coach and founder of the Healed Sister. After conquering her own mental health struggles and midlife crisis, she now empowers Muslim women to heal their pasts and step into empowered versions of themselves, all while staying true to their Islamic values. She also mentors other women to become impactful coaches and is here to tell her story right now. Assalamu alaikum, how are you?
Wa alaikum assalam, Khadijah. Alhamdulillah, I'm great. How are you?
I am good. It's so exciting to have you here. I'm so excited for our conversation. I mean, something I would like to know from you, which I ask every guest that comes on this podcast, is without the titles, without the work you do, who are you?
Wow, what a powerful question. In a world of labels, subhanAllah. I am a slave of Allah, first and foremost. I am a soul, probably a romantic soul.
How do you mean?
In the sense that I love beauty. I love love as well. In a very fast-paced society, I'm very old school in that sense.
Beautiful.
I am a soul that loves to help people and that finds joy in being of service. I like to have a laugh. I like to travel the world and meet different cultures, learn about other horizons, and just be surrounded by people who love Allah and people who remind me of the Prophet ﷺ. This is how I would define myself. So I would define my soul rather than my body or my mind.
That is so beautiful, and that's an actually really in-depth answer. And I think quite often it takes people quite a while to understand who they really are without all of the labels. How has that journey been for you? I mean, as somebody who is successful in what it is you're doing right now as a personal development coach, all of the women that I have met that have become successful, that have stepped outside the box to do their own thing, they have a story to tell, right? And they have, it came from somewhere much deeper than that, because it takes a real strength. Only 1% of people go on to become entrepreneurs. That's not women. That's 1% of people.
Wow.
So what is your backstory? Like, what made you become who you are today, running your business and doing what you're doing now?
That's a really good question. The first word that comes to mind is pain. I think it takes pain to get to a point where you really get to know yourself and you shed the layers of who you're supposed to be versus who you truly are. So for me, I was supposed to be the good girl. And I was for a very long time. I was really good at school. I was the daughter who made her parents pleased. I was not a troublemaker, alhamdulillah. I grew up in a household where my brother had schizophrenia, but we didn't know until much later. So he was only diagnosed in his late 20s. And before that, he was abusive, emotionally and physically, which made my environment very unsafe. But that built my personality. So it made me the strong woman that I am, but it also turned me into a woman that was pretty much trying to protect herself from everything and who built a wall in front of her, which made me very ambitious and very proactive in my desire to get out of my situation, my circumstance, being from a middle-class family And then in my 20s, I was exhausted. I was exhausted because I was constantly on fight or flight. And this is where the journey to getting to know myself started, really. Mm-hmm. It's when I realized the young girl who had to protect herself from her brother does not need to exist anymore. Yeah. You can let go of her. You can let go of the coping mechanisms. And you can get to know yourself from a place of you are safe.
Yeah.
Who are you when you are safe? Mm-hmm. And this is when I discovered my soul. Not just that body and that mind who were trying to escape constantly the potentiality of being hurt by everyone, because that's how my life started. Mm-hmm. I was prone to be hurt by the people who were supposed to love me and protect me.
How was that for you? Like having a brother that had schizophrenia that had not been diagnosed. What was that experience like for you?
It caused a lot of confusion, especially since I looked up to my parents as protectors and they were not able to be that for me. And so it was really difficult. And that's why when I came across psychology, the notion of inner child for me was really life-changing. This notion of like, there's a child within me that's hurting and that's really frustrated at the idea that the people who are supposed to care for you are actually hurting you. So the pain was not coming from my brother. It was coming from my dad not being there to protect me.
And can I ask, because I know from cultural perspectives as well, how was it accepted when they did have him diagnosed?
That's a good question, because a lot of the time people will jump into conclusions that sound like, oh, it's black magic, before they even talk about mental health. Mm-hmm. I think the reason why it took so long to diagnose him was because there was a denial of this could be an illness, it could be mental health, because where I come from and for a lot of brown and black Muslims, it's the same thing. There's this idea that mental health is not a real thing. Yeah. If you can't see the disease, it's not real. And when I got depressed when I was pregnant, it was the same thing.
You have spoken about growing up in a household of immigrant parents. How do you think that had an impact on how they raised you?
Where do I start? I mean, it defined our lifestyle because my parents were on survival mode. Mm-hmm. My dad came to France. He was working a low income earning job. My mom was a cleaner. So we were always trying to make ends meet. Mm-hmm. That was my environment. It was just like, there was no holidays. There was no like buying the high brand type of items. And I would see the difference between my lifestyle and my friend's lifestyle, which was like all about going to Disneyland and going to concerts and things like that. So it definitely impacted them, but I'm grateful for that because I was able to see what my priorities were going to be in life. Okay. Meaning I was a minimalist from a very young age.
Not out of choice.
Not out of choice, but my way of thinking was I don't want to be a burden for my family, so I'm not going to ask for anything. Mm-hmm. But that also led me to wanting to do more in order to have a different type of lifestyle for myself and for my children, and also to become that woman who would be able to buy nice things for my mom, especially.
So some of your drive came from that, because you've also spoken about as a child having big dreams. What were those big dreams?
It all goes back to looking at my mom, seeing her struggle emotionally, go to work at 6 a.m. to clean the supermarket, come back and like take care of the household, cook for us, and literally do everything, and think, I owe her everything, and I don't want her to struggle like this. Mm-hmm. So the big dreams were all about my mom. It all started with that. It was about empowering other women. And I've had that since I was 15. I wanted to create a fashion label somewhere on the African continent because that's where I came from. A company that would provide a decent salary to women, not just a decent salary, an empowering salary to women. Because I could see that my mom was stuck in a life that was not fulfilling to her. And again, it was this idea of like, I'm a burden. So I'm going to work hard to not be a burden to her anymore. And not only that, I want to offer this opportunity of being free to other women. So I don't see them suffer the way that my mom suffered.
It's so interesting because you're speaking about something that I can relate to, but maybe in a slightly different way. And the way you're speaking about the reason behind your dreams and your goals was almost, and I don't know how to say this in the best way, it was almost like you became the parent to your mum. And I say that because I feel like I became the parent to my mum. And not, yes, financially, my dad worked incredibly hard. Full weeks worth of work, followed by the weekends, working just to make ends meet. But my mum's history and her past made her unable to show her emotions and unable to communicate, especially emotions. Communicate in general, she wasn't great at, but communicating anything on a deep level, it just never happened. And so I became almost, I say a parent to my mum, because it's almost like I had to try and help her become who she needed to become. And I still to this day feel like she was trying to make an effort to impress me. It's like the wrong way around in a relationship. And when you speak about that, it's just kind of reminded me of that for myself. Did you feel like you were trying to give your mum what it was that she needed? Do you feel like you were stepping into more adult mindset to care for your mum?
100%.
It's quite deep, isn't it, when you think about that?
It is really deep. And I had a very powerful conversation with a mentor when I was in the process of getting divorced. And I sat down with him and I told him the situation. And he asked me this question that at the time I didn't understand. And I was arrogant because I hadn't been exposed to seeking help before. Mm-hmm. But I told him my life story. And I told him, I don't want to be like my mom. I need to get a divorce. I need out of this marriage. And after telling him about my mom's life so much, he realized I had put myself in a situation where I was exactly living what my mom had lived. I was in a marriage that I was not happy in. And I felt like I was in a cage. Mm-hmm. And me wanting to get out of it was actually me trying to repeat what my mom has experienced because I wanted her so bad to get out of that marriage. And this was me doing it for her. And so his question was, don't you feel like you're trying to live your mom's life?
Mm. Almost trying to fix your mom's life.
Exactly. And this is something that if you are living your life unconsciously, you're just repeating patterns that you witnessed and that were modeled to you. Yeah. This is why women who have unavailable fathers will be attracted to unavailable men because they're trying so hard to change their dad through their new relationship with that romantic partner who's not there for me. Because what they want really is to be chosen. Mm-hmm. I was not chosen by my dad, but if I'm chosen by this man, I'm fixing something.
Yeah. And it's really interesting. I had a conversation with Aisha Mercedes a little while ago, and she was talking about trauma. And she was talking about these signs of trauma. I was like, well, I have all of those, but I've never really been through something majorly traumatic in my life. She was like, you don't need to have been through something. She was like, neglect, emotional neglect. These are all linked with trauma. And the more I thought about that, I realized actually, probably everybody in their life has been through some form of trauma. And the way they're living their life is just a protective shell without really looking into the depths of who they are. When was it that you decided to actually work on yourself? Like, was there a pivotal moment or something that made you think, no, I can become better than who I feel I am right now?
Yeah, 100%. I remember that day as if it was yesterday. So for me, it was waking up one morning, COVID is happening. I'm separated from my daughter. I haven't seen her in months. People are dying. I'm not spiritual. I'm not religious at all. I'm engaging in a lot of unhealthy coping mechanisms. And I wake up that morning and I look at myself in the mirror and I feel disgusted by myself. And this for me was clearly my rock bottom. Mm-hmm. And I know people don't believe that it's possible to change very fast, but I made a decision there to not be that woman anymore.
Can I ask, what made you feel disgusted by what you saw?
It was the accumulation of behaviors that were so far away from my values. Mm-hmm. And the realization that I was wasting my potential. And I knew that for a few years, but I think COVID has precipitated things.
Absolutely.
Because it was that awakening of like, I'm not going to be here forever. And what if I died in a country where I'm alone and I'm not even close to my child?
COVID was the first time where people had to sit with themselves.
That as well.
There was no distractions. There was no structure of life keeping you busy. You had to sit with yourself and think and listen to your own thoughts, because we are constantly distracted. That's how this system has been designed, to keep us distracted. And when distractions are taken away, you start to peel back layer by layer. Who are you? So what happened in that moment? What decision did you make?
Simply put, the first thing I did was remove any unhealthy coping mechanisms that I was engaging in. I was self-harming with those behaviors. And so it started with recognizing that it's not by hurting myself that I'm going to get myself out of that hole. So compassion was a big part of it as well.
To yourself?
To myself, yeah. And forgiveness. I forgave myself for the mistakes that I made that led me to that rock bottom. And then I stopped everything that was not helping, and I came back to Allah. I say that, but it's really Him who brought me back, because He put that disgust in me for me to come back to Him. Because really, healing is about recognizing that no matter what we do in this life, we are going to be flawed.
Yeah.
Perfection belongs to Him and Him only.
Absolutely.
And I had never lost faith in Him, alhamdulillah. But I had lost this feeling of He is here for me. And I got that back during COVID. So I started praying again. I started meditating. I started doing some yoga. Just taking care of my body, eating better, reconnecting with my family as well, because there had been a breakdown, because they didn't understand what I was going through. Again, this whole idea of like mental illness is not a thing. And I'm struggling with depression for years, but no one is able to see it.
Were you hiding it?
For a long time, I didn't talk to my mom about it. But I was talking to my ex-spouse about it. And coming from a similar culture, it was also difficult for him to understand. So there's this idea that if you're not pulling your hair and trying to throw yourself out of the window, you're not depressed. Like, depression has an image in movies and in our mind that's completely away from what it truly is.
Complete exaggeration.
Exaggeration. I can be a highly functioning woman and be highly depressed.
I want to ask you as well, when you spoke about looking in the mirror and who you saw, and this is based on one of your interviews that I watched, you were speaking about her, how she was feeling, but you were not speaking about it as if it was yourself. Why is that?
I think there has been a complete detachment from that woman.
Yeah.
And it's so strange to say that, but I don't assimilate with her anymore. I think there's good in that, because I truly believe in this concept of recreating ourselves with the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what I did after that moment, which means I let go of that old self. I love her. I respect her struggles. She brought me where I am today.
I was just thinking that.
So I owe her to a certain extent, but I have detached from her because I don't want to allow myself to ever go back to that place again.
And did this lead you to want to go into personal development? Like, what was that turning point for you? And also with that, you didn't just choose to go into personal development, you chose to do it for yourself. Because you could have learned that and gone to work for somebody else, but you didn't. You set up your own business in doing it. So what was the point which you decided that's what I'd like to do? And how did that lead into you saying, I'm going to do this for myself. I'm going to set this up by myself, because it's not an easy thing to do.
So in that moment where everything is closed, and Morocco, especially where I was very strict in terms of COVID restrictions. There was no options of working for someone else anyway. The funny thing was that I had £0 to my name. I was really broke at that time, subhanAllah. But I had access to a lifetime course that I had bought 6 years before that.
Wow, subhanAllah.
And it was a course about creating your business online that was made by a French Muslim man, may Allah bless him, because I was always directed towards having my own business anyway. Mm-hmm. This was always something that I had in me. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Wow. I just didn't know why. Mm-hmm. It's almost like it was part of my identity. Like I could never see myself working for someone in the long term. I've always wanted to be the leader.
I'm asking why, because I have also had that same feeling, but it wasn't until just after COVID, when somebody asked me why, that I had to really stop and think about it in depth. Mm. Why? Yes, because I want to have my own thing. I want to do my own thing. I don't really have the desire to work for somebody else. And she asked me, she's a life coach. She was like, no, but why? And as I thought about it, I realized that I don't really trust people very easily. And I have grown up with a mother who wasn't really able to communicate with me, didn't really give me that emotional, like she's never once told me I love you. She's never given me a hug. Like I don't remember any form of emotion from her at all. And it's not her fault. And that's absolutely fine. But it made me realize I can't rely on anybody. If I can't rely on my own mum, then who can I rely on? And as well, I wasn't Muslim. And when I dug into it, it came back to exactly that. I don't ever want to have to rely on anybody that can let me down. Mm-hmm. And so by having my own business, the only person that lets me down is me. And not only that, I get to give other people the opportunity to come and work with me. So to me, that's an honor and a blessing to be able to do that, knowing that I have no intention to ever let them down. I will make sure I can do all I can to protect them and their positions within any company that I set up. Mm-hmm. So if you really try to dig into that reason, why do you want to be an entrepreneur? Like, can you get to that point?
I think 100% what you said relates to me as well, with this feeling of I can't trust anyone. I can't rely on anyone. So I have to protect myself and I have to be everything for myself because of the environment I grew up in and the lack of support emotionally, physically, and protection as well, due to what we mentioned earlier. So definitely there's a big part of that. But I love being an entrepreneur. I love being my own boss. I love being a free spirit. Waking up in the morning and decide, I don't want to work today. I want to book a plane ticket for Morocco and I'm off. So a lot of who I am today came from the pain, but a lot of it is also a part of like passion and really tapping into that authentic self. And I know who that authentic self is now. Mm-hmm. And I know that it all comes beautifully together with what I've been through. Yeah. So I don't blame my past trauma for the decisions that I'm making now. I think I needed that to make those decisions, and those decisions are beautiful in themselves.
And how have you found the entrepreneurial journey? What's that been like for you?
Alhamdulillah. I mean, it's been 4 years now. It's been a beautiful journey in the sense that I would do it again and again and again. Mm-hmm. But it has been difficult as well, especially working with Muslims. Mm-hmm. I think adds an extra layer of challenges.
100%. In what way would you say?
In our field of personal development and growth and business mentoring, there are a lot of stereotypes. There are a lot of barriers that make people very cold to the idea of investing in themselves, mm-hmm. that I don't see in other communities. But we have decided to work with Muslims, and I think there is a blessing in being pioneers. Yeah. I think we will get the reward of opening doors for the next generation as well and making it easier for them as well. So for me, it's all about not focusing on the outcomes, not focusing on the money that we're making, but focusing on our why, our big why. The intention is not to become billionaires. Yeah. The intention is really to change the ummah for the better.
I was going to ask, what is your intention? Like, what is your idea of success?
My idea of success is feeling like every day I'm getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah. This is why whether I'm working or not on that day, it doesn't matter. But that's why I love my job as well, because it allows me to feel closer to Him, because I am of service to the ummah. Mm-hmm. I used to work at Primark, for example. I worked in call centers. I work at IKEA. I didn't feel close to Allah in those positions. Now I can finish the day, even if it's a tough day. I've listened to women's issues. I've listened to their struggles. I have been a place where they have emotionally unloaded. It's difficult, but I can go to sleep and think, Alhamdulillah, I've done something good for someone. I've relieved someone from their hardship, and I pray that Allah relieves that hardship for me in the hereafter somehow.
We spoke off camera about the Muslim community and business, because my opinion is that we shouldn't need to be even boycotting, because we should be so strong in our businesses as a community that it's the first choice. It's not the backup plan because they now can't buy from a big giant corporation. I think in the past kind of few years, I've started to see change. I've started to see, and obviously I only work with women, but in general, I've seen Muslim women stepping up, doing things more professional, and that's what's needed. It needs to be done on a really high level. And I feel like you're somebody who's demonstrating that, mashallah, and it's so beautiful to see. What would you say to maybe other women that want to work on themselves or want to build a business or just want to do something in terms of doing it properly? Because I think a lot of things are done half-heartedly within our community. Mm. And then that means the results are half-hearted results. Mm. Like, what can people do to give 100% when they're working towards something to make it the equivalent of these giants or the mindsets or these speakers on self-development? Like, all of the people that are really famous, that are doing it really well, aren't Muslim. Mm. So what can we do to get to that level?
You know, when I started my Islamic studies, my teacher said something that really changed my mindset in many fields, including the studies one, but also in business. Mm-hmm. He said, don't rely on yourself. Because the number one thing that stops women or anyone from starting something is self-doubt. Mm-hmm. When you remove this idea of like, I can't do it, and you replace it with Allah will make it happen. Yeah. I rely on Him, not on my ability to do things. Mm-hmm. I rely on His generosity and His power, then everything becomes possible.
There's this real imposter syndrome that exists amongst our community. And for me, I find it hard to enter that mindset myself because of my deen. Because I make dua with every intention that I make before I take that action. So Allah, if this is good for me, make it easy for me. If this is bad for me, make it difficult, take it far from me. I then take the action. So whatever comes out of that action, whether it works or doesn't work, it's good. Yeah. It's meant to be. And I think this is a mindset that I think holds a lot of people back, is that they have this, well, what if I'm not good enough? What if I'm not going to be able to be like that person? They think of anybody they see online as somebody that's so far away from where they are right now. But it's really not the case. Like, how would you advise somebody right now that is sat there thinking, well, I could never get to that state of mindset, or I could never have my own business?
Mm. Work on your limiting beliefs alongside with your yaqeen. So what you mentioned, certainty that when you make dua, Allah is listening and He will be there for you. Mm-hmm. He will have your back. And so we have a module in my program that's all about limiting beliefs. And the first thing that we talk about is, how do you perceive Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because that's the first thing that's going to impact the way that you see the world, the way that you see yourself. If you see Him as a punisher, as someone who's withholding blessings from you, someone who's angry at you, someone who's out there to get you and who wants to throw you in Jahannam, in hell, living life is going to be very difficult for you. Starting things is going to be difficult for you because you see your provider as the opposite.
Do you think that's something that's come from parenting?
100%. I think it comes from education, from hearing, oh, Allah is going to punish you if you do this.
That's haram.
That's haram.
Allah will punish you.
Yes. And as soon as something bad happens to you, instead of hearing Allah test those whom He loves, we hear the opposite. We hear, what did you do to upset Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And I'm not saying that it's never a punishment, what we go through in life, but I'm just saying we need to rebalance things.
It's really interesting. So in my house, my husband and I have had a conversation that whenever we speak to our children about anything like this, that if we're going to mention hellfire, we mention paradise even more. right? Because we're not going to ignore the conversation because it's real. But let's talk about what you can do to get into paradise.
Yeah.
Let's make that even bigger. Because if you can put your focus on that, then you can achieve your goals. If it's meant for you, you will achieve them. But if you're living in fear, it takes you back to fight or flight. And also, I feel like that starts to give children a fear of their parents finding out rather than worrying about what they can do to please Allah. You know, so I think it's such a really important part of whatever journey you're on, is keeping that at the forefront of your mind. Okay, I just want to speak about the entrepreneurial journey. And you said that sometimes it can be challenging. And I know that you've set yourself a goal for 2024 to slow down, to avoid burnout.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about burnout for a second, because apparently 60% of people in the UK face burnout because they feel they are never capable of achieving what's been asked of them. Not what they're even setting for themselves, of what's being expected of them. What's your experience with burnout like? What does that look like for you?
If you look at my upbringing and everything that we mentioned so far, it's almost like burnout for me was a way of life. I had these unconscious beliefs that I'm only productive when I'm pushing myself to more than my limits. And I can't work efficiently if there's no chaos around me. Because that's how I grew up. This is how I attained my top effectiveness, if I can call it like that, is by being burnt out, emotionally especially. And so I had to let go of all of those beliefs. And I had to recondition myself and truly believe that I can work in flow without torturing myself.
It's so interesting that you have got straight to the point of burnout being emotional, because a lot of people see burnout only as a physical thing. But by which point, when you reach a physical burnout, you've gone way too far. If you are physically crashing, and it has happened to me as well. And I think that you say about chaos, it's so funny. I joke about chaos with my husband. I'll be like, right, I'm bored. Come on, let's create some chaos. Because that to me is like a really comfortable thing. Like being on the go constantly, always doing something is a really comfortable thing for me. And I get bored very easily. So we joke about kind of chaos, but burnout, because I'm somebody who has been capable of managing my emotions. I would say capable. I am someone who has, for many years, just suppressed my emotions, I would say. And that I'm capable of handling high levels of stress to the point that I don't realize I'm stressed. So I think I'm okay. But then what was happening to me for a section of my life was my neck started to lock. My shoulders, I'd constantly have knots in my shoulders. I'd be going for massages. Like the massage therapist, she's like, I can't get these out in one session. You shouldn't be coming more than once a week. And I was like, well, why are they there? I couldn't understand. I thought it was from training. My body physically took on the stress to a point of burnout. And then when I would crash for like 2 weeks, maybe months, where my focus goes. I lose my coordination, my balance isn't right. Like physically, I'm getting all the symptoms. What I hadn't realized, and it wasn't until I had to completely change my own circumstance in life. I had to change the people around me, the location where I was living. I changed everything around me. All of these things went. No more back pain, no more neck pain. My coordination came back, my reflex came back. Like my reflex had gone. Wow. There are things that you don't realize because mentally, I was just managing. It was just normal.
Yeah.
I now am capable of identifying burnout really soon on before it hits. Is that something that you found that you're able to do? Like, what does that look like for you?
Absolutely. I feel like you're speaking my language right now, subhanAllah. I think we have very similar temperaments. And so we thrive off being challenged.
Yes.
And I think that's a beautiful thing to a certain extent. For example, a couple of weeks ago, I've had to let go of a member of my team, and it's a key member, and we're mid-launch. So I have to take on her tasks.
Yeah.
Part of me is like, I hate this. But another part is like, Bismillah. I was waiting for a challenge. I've been bored. You said it. I've been bored. I want this. And so I love that side of my temperament because it allows me to be a good entrepreneur. Because if you're not going to be able to adapt to a change or to unexpected crisis, it's going to be difficult to be a business owner.
You have to be adaptable.
You have to. But balance is about recognizing when burnout is approaching,
Yes.
and slowing down and taking care of yourself, because you understand that if you can't function anymore, your business will not function either.
100%. I've actually got to a point where I will turn around to my team and say, I need 3 days out, I'll be back. And that 3 days, I will probably just be by myself. I'm not going to focus on work. I'll focus on something because I want to do something, maybe focus on reading some Quran, maybe actually challenge myself with learning a game, just something that is not requiring too much future focus. It's very much in the present, like bringing everything back to the present rather than what it is I'm working towards.
Yeah.
That 3 days, by day 2, I'm normally good. By day 3, I'm literally eager to get back onto everything. But if you don't identify it soon enough, it can have impact on you for months going on.
And the emotions that you don't let out, your body will completely express in its own ways. I'm blessed to have a business coach who will push me to take time off. And from time to time, I'll just book 2 weeks off and I'll go to Morocco most of the time. I'll do a type of retreat where I'm just by myself in nature. And I do what I call silence retreats, where I completely disconnect. And
I've seen those, and I've always wondered how I would mentally cope with not doing anything.
It's challenging, especially if, just like me, you think very fast.
Yes.
You're very creative. You're always thinking. As soon as you wake up in the morning, you're thinking about the next thing you want to start and do and improve. It is challenging, but at the end of those days where I'm not stimulated by any devices and I'm just letting out the stream of consciousness, I feel refreshed and I have amazing ideas on those days as well. Recently I did that in Morocco, and the idea that I got was like, subhanAllah, I have to do these retreats for myself because I don't know where to go. No one is offering this type of retreats. The only possibility for me would be to go with non-Muslims and do some sort of yoga silence thing. And obviously it would probably not be aligned with our values. And I was like, I need to create this for the Muslim women out there who are feeling overwhelmed and just want to break. And this is my idea in general anyway. I do want to open a retreat center in Morocco potentially.
Inshallah.
But it's all about thinking, how can I already work on that right now without having the retreat physical center just yet? Let's just do it now.
Yeah.
And it's when you take those breaks that you actually allow yourself to be a lot more productive. And for me, that was a big mindset shift. For me, taking a break was not productive.
No, there's less noise, which is beneficial. There's less influence coming in. So you're returning to your natural state.
And you need to restore anyway. You need to restore in order to be performant. I see myself as an athlete. What do athletes do? They don't work out 24/7. They have rest day.
And it's really interesting because a lot of people, when they start to feel a bit sluggish, or they feel like they want to change their weight, or physically they want to get stronger, what do? They take action. They join a gym, or they get a personal trainer, or they do something. But when people find their mindset is getting a little bit sluggish, or they want to improve it, they don't take instant action. It's not usually until they crash and they reach a really low point that they start to work on that. And that's why where we're sat right now, this is my health hub I opened up. It was for that reason, is that working on your mental well-being should be as easy as signing up to a gym. That's how we should be thinking about it. What roadblocks or challenges do you think Muslim women face when thinking about wanting to work on their personal development?
You know, I've been leading interviews for my group coaching program that's starting in a couple of weeks. And the one thing that keeps on coming up is this dismissiveness towards their own emotions. Muslim women are really good at ignoring how they feel and completely betraying themselves. And I recognize myself in that because for 10 years plus, that was me. There's a denial of like, I'm struggling. And I think it comes mainly from growing up in an environment where emotions were repressed. Yeah. So you mentioned that yourself. It was the same thing for me. My parents would not talk about their emotions. Everything would be brushed under the carpet. My brother's schizophrenia, my dad's cancer. Every time something big would happen and something that would require us to sit as a family and openly talk and be vulnerable, never done that before.
Because vulnerability is viewed as a weakness.
Yeah.
Which is so dangerous.
It is.
And especially in how we're raising boys, because man up, stop crying, don't show your emotions. And then how is that boy, when he turns into a man, going to be in a marriage and be able to communicate? And it's the same for women, to be honest with you. I know you speak about feminine energy. And for me, I'm someone who's always had a real masculine energy. And it's really interesting because even when it comes to dress choices and what I choose to wear, I've always been somebody, I can go super girly, but it's never going to be with pink and it's never going to be with flowers. And I sat with myself and questioned why. Why do we all have such different tastes when it comes to how we choose to dress? And why would I never wear flowers? And why would I definitely would not be wearing baby pink? Like, why? And as I really thought about it, I think it's a weakness. It was a weakness that I felt the need to show this level of confidence, this level of power, this level of no one's going to hurt me, no one's going to do anything to me. And the best way to do that is to have a more masculine energy that I've recently started to try and break that down a bit more. Is that, do you think, like a protective shield?
100%. I was going to say it. You took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say it's a protective mechanism. And a lot of Muslim women grow up in environments where men are not being men, unfortunately, just like my upbringing. And so I decided to be the man in my life. And that put me in a position where I was stuck in my masculine for a very long time. And I held on to it because I saw it as the side of me that pushed me forward. And I completely denied my feminine side until I started healing myself and realizing deep down, there is a woman in there who wants to be vulnerable, who wants to go with the flow, who wants to surrender to Allah's decree, who wants to be taken care of and trust people. That's the feminine side. And when you get to accept that side of you, it's a beautiful, beautiful experience because that's where your authentic self lies as well.
I had to learn and force myself to become more feminine when I got married because I was still like, no, I'll carry the bags. What do you like? I'll do that. I'll go out and put the rubbish out. Like, I know these are things that men and women can both do, but I realized what I was doing was not benefiting my husband.
Yeah.
You know, I had to really work on becoming more vulnerable and having some more trust there that actually this man will do what I'm doing for myself, that he can do that. And there's still reassurance in me because I know that I am capable and I don't have to lose that. That doesn't make me incapable of doing it, but it's okay to let that go.
Yeah.
You know, and it's something I had to kind of really build to work. Why do you think so many women now are stepping into entrepreneurial positions?
There's so many things happening in the world right now that makes being an entrepreneur as a Muslim woman the best option. I think there's an awakening spiritually for a lot of women, and they are realizing if I want to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, working for someone 9 to 5 is probably not going to be the best thing.
Absolutely.
And it's not going to be for everyone. As you said, only 1% of the population becomes entrepreneurs. I don't know if that means successful entrepreneurs or not, but...
Well, most people don't last longer than 6 months to a year.
That's the thing.
So success meaning, I guess, somebody who continues and doesn't give up.
Yeah. So it definitely isn't going to be for everyone, but for those who really want it and are obsessed with making it work, it can be a really beautiful venture.
Are women trying to be like men?
I think they already are because they didn't have a choice. So when it comes into that debate of are women too masculine nowadays, the answer is definitely yes, but we need to ask why.
Yeah.
And the why is we didn't have a choice. If I am not in my masculine, how am I going to feed myself and my child? So it's not about pointing fingers. It really isn't. I understand the brothers who are also struggling with being in their feminine. There are reasons for that. Society has led us to being too masculine as women and for men being too feminine at the moment. But as Muslims, this is where we have to say, I'm not supposed to follow society.
And that's what I was going to take it back to. So if you look at the time of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you look at his first wife, Khadijah radiallahu anha, what was she doing? You know, so actually, are we becoming more, like, are women stepping into male roles and vice versa? Or are we just returning back to what was meant for us? Because many of these labels that we have got have come from cultural expectations and cultural practices and society's expectations and anything that you see on the media of this is what a woman should look like and this is what a man should look like. You know, we need to wipe those away and just focus on the Islamic principles.
Yeah.
Because I think that clears up a lot of this finger pointing and labeling that actually shouldn't even be there in the first place.
I did a series recently called Empowered by Example, where I took my audience through 4 days. And the first day was about Khadijah, may Allah be pleased with her. And while doing my research, I realized she really was the most emotionally intelligent woman on earth, subhanAllah. Because she was an entrepreneur, yes, but she was not out of her feminine.
No.
Because she was not doing the dirty work.
No, exactly.
She had male employees who would go on the caravans and do the trading for her. She was just in a position where she was in charge and she was cashing in that risk, mashallah, tabarakallah, but she was not putting herself in a situation where she had to act and behave like a man. And that's the perfect balance for us as well.
100%. And this is why when I work with all my mentees, we spoke about values earlier, the first thing I get them to do is identify their values, because most people never sit with themselves. They think they know what their values are, but to actually list it, to actually sit down and say, well, what are my most important values? And how can I not compromise those in all the decisions that I make moving forwards? And then that way, as you said, you then have that perfect balance.
I have that exercise as well with my clients where at the end of the program, after 3 months of working together, we do this. We sit and I ask them for 30 of their values. And it is really difficult, actually, you're right. People are not aware that they are living on autopilot.
And lots of people come back with things saying, right, these are my values. I'm like, they're not values. The things that you have identified are not values. They are just terms that you live by.
Yeah.
You know? And you're setting your terms as, well, I don't want to do this. I don't want to work with this type of person. I don't want to, some people are like, I don't want to have music. I'm like, but they're not values. You're only capable of setting your term. Your value in that, on all of those points are my deen. The value is my faith, you know? So being able to identify values and sitting with yourself, I think not just in business, in every life decision you make, will make you more content because you're not having to compromise.
Yeah.
You spoke about vulnerability as well. What things do you do to help your clients feel safe to be vulnerable?
So we mentioned limiting beliefs. The first thing that we talk about is how to let go of everything that's stopping you from being vulnerable at the moment. So you have to know what is it that you believe, especially about feminine energy and about vulnerability, that's not allowing you to feel safe opening up. And a lot of the time it has to do with relationships with other women. So in our cultures, unfortunately, there is a lot of toxicity between women. There's jealousy, there's comparison, there's envy. And so you have Muslim women who grow up in an environment where their first enemy is going to be their mother. And like you said, if I'm supposed to be safe with that primary caregiver and I'm not, who else can I trust? So repairing the mother wound is very important in order for women to be able to be vulnerable. And one of the key elements of being able to do that in my programs is the sisterhood.
Yeah.
I had an interview with one of our clients recently, and she was one of those women who struggle to trust other women. And when we don't trust other women, by the way, it's a reflection of how much we trust ourselves as well. We're projecting. So if I can't trust another woman, I probably don't trust myself fully as well. But coming back on this, she told me, I had never been part of a sisterhood like this. And for me, it was very strange at the beginning. I felt like everyone was fake because we're not used to receiving love from other women. But then once you open your heart and you open yourself to the idea that other women can want good for you and they can love you for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you feel worthy and you feel capable of also being that woman who creates a space for other women.
That's so important that you're able to put yourself in a situation where you are surrounded by people, by women who want the best for you. Because that's a really key point of what you said there. Because you can be around people that are happy for you, but people that are happy for you aren't the same as people who believe in you and who are literally cheering you on to improve yourself. Because, I mean, anyone can be happy for anyone. Like, yeah, well done, great, you're clapping, but you are not necessarily going to be like, hang on a minute, what you're doing right now is not you. I see you going off track a little bit. You want those women around, the ones that actually can be honest with you and say, you're messing up right now. I know you can do better. But to be amongst the women that will also compliment you when you're at your best or when you're on your way to working towards something that is good. And that community is pivotal in your ability to succeed in whatever it is you're working towards.
Yeah. And this is why I pay 5 figures for my business coach. Because, as you said, there is a difference between having people who love you and having people who support you on your growth. These are completely different, yeah.
Completely different. And most people stay in a situation because they're around people who are happy for them. But that's only because it makes them feel better.
Yeah.
Rather than the people that are pulling them up.
So the way that I define the Healed Sister is a place where you get tough love.
Yes.
It is love, but sometimes it can be tough because it comes with honesty.
And honesty is so beautiful because it's rare. I think it is rare. I think people are working on themselves and it's getting better, but it is rare that you're around people that are really honest with you, regardless of what it is you're doing.
Yeah.
How do you envisage the future of personal development for Muslim women? And what role do you play in making that become something that's bigger than what it is right now?
I'm really excited for it because I see more and more women becoming involved in personal development and also wanting to help other women. We're training women to become coaches as well. So we've got a whole group of incredible souls. Like, their intentions are so pure. So I'm really excited about what's to come. And I can see it going towards a space where people don't actually think twice before investing in themselves anymore.
I can't wait. I can't wait because I'm so happy to invest in myself.
Me too, alhamdulillah. Like, I'm not into materialistic stuff a lot, but when I do pay for something that is going to be about learning something and growing, no matter how uncomfortable it is, I feel excited.
Yes.
And I also see the personal development sphere going to a place where we meet and we work together. And that's what I want to create as well. Now I have trainee coaches. I don't want to just let them be after their training. I want to be able to create a hub where they can help each other. And they're already doing that so well through the sisterhood that we've created for them. But imagine in a few years, we'll have trained maybe thousands of people all around the world. Like right now, I have clients in South Africa, Germany, Japan, America. If we all came together with the sole purpose of helping each other for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what can we create?
Do you want to build a legacy?
100%. I think, alhamdulillah, it all comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but I think that legacy is already happening.
So I'm the same. And my reason for it is we are only guaranteed that we won't be here forever. We know we're going to die. And people don't like to hear that conversation. I feel like Muslims are the most confident in having that conversation. But what we're building is for when we're no longer here, is for the next generations to have a better life than what we had. Like each generation that comes, if we can leave good seeds for them and allow that to continue, then I feel like that's even deeds, because ultimately our goal is paradise, right? So anything that we can do that passes information on to other people, that can be passed on to other people, that makes other people's lives better, inshallah will bring good deeds.
Yeah.
So it's so easy to kind of have a big goal in mind when you know that your reason for doing it is not materialistic.
Yeah.
And I think that should make it easy for women wanting to think about starting their own journey. Have that in mind. It's not about you trying to look good or whether people will listen to you or won't listen to you or whether you're going to become famous. Like, fame should never even be a thought in that process. It should be, how many people's lives can I improve in the work that I want to do?
100%. Yeah. And for me, it's not even about my name. Like, I don't want my name to be associated with any of the work that I do, because again, it all comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I would die happy if I managed to help people come back to Allah, or even come to Allah, period. It has happened once where someone messaged me and said, I want to take my shahada because I've been watching your content, and it has brought some sort of peace to me. And if I can do that 1,000 times and secure my spot in Jannah, what else can I ask for? So these are the type of things that I'm obsessed with. And it's both a desire to make an impact, leave a legacy, but it's also a very selfish thing of like, I want to be in the highest level.
Are you happy with where you are in your life right now?
Yeah, 100%. It's not perfect. It's not easy.
It should never be perfect.
It's never going to be perfect. But alhamdulillah, I think it all has to do with my connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. After having touched rock bottom and struggled so much with my spirituality, I can say it doesn't matter how much I have in my bank account, who surrounds me, and what I have materialistically. As long as I have an attachment to Him, that's really what matters.
Yeah, and having that full trust. How have you found it incorporating the Islamic values into the work that you do? Because that's the most beautiful part, I think, of being an entrepreneur, is the fact that you make the decisions. You get to choose how that's delivered. You're basically bringing what we consider as Western services and combining it with Islamic values. How has that been for you?
Again, it is a challenge. For example, I started covering my face recently, and it has brought the metrics down. It has made it harder to sell. But I didn't even think about these things when I did it, because for me, it was about my ego being in check. Yeah. And me witnessing a lot of sisters who were public and who were going viral lose some sort of authenticity to themselves, and I was dead scared of that for myself. So I had to make that choice. Looking back at it, I would do it 10,000 times the same way. So incorporating Islamic values in our business is not going to please everyone. But what I think is that it is going to bring the clients that I want to work with.
It shouldn't please everybody.
It shouldn't. If you're pleasing everyone, you're pleasing nobody.
No one.
And you're betraying yourself. So alhamdulillah, I'm really grateful for the people who follow the content, not for how I look, but for what I'm saying and for what it is in the depth of it, not how it looks really, not the form.
So let's speak about that for a second, because social media is a minefield. There are enormous pros, there are enormous cons. Like, there is no middle ground with it. You need to be aware of both, but for many people, it can really affect their self-esteem. And I think this is a fear for many people who want to build a business and want to be online, but they're so conscious of what other people are thinking. How has that been for you? How has your experience been for that? And what advice would you give to other people?
Yeah, that's the number one thing that my trainee coaches are telling me is like, how am I going to put myself out there if I don't want to talk about myself and I don't want to show myself? Alhamdulillah, I am immensely blessed in the sense that my family does not understand English. So that that first barrier of like, what is my family going to say? I didn't have that. And it's such a small blessing, but at the same time, a huge one, because would I talk so openly about my past, about my struggles, about my family, if I knew that they could understand everything that I was doing? I don't know. But now I am at a place where I'm comfortable enough because my why is bigger than my fear of being seen and being judged.
That's the answer, really, is if you can pull back to your why, then nothing else really matters. You know, as long as you're not compromising what's important to you, your faith, your values, then pulling it back to your reason why you're doing it. What about in terms of comments that people get on social media? Like, is that something you've experienced?
Definitely. There were times where it was really difficult, especially this year when the YouTube channel went viral. So the channel went viral and I got a lot of hate comments because people would watch a little bit of the video, they would make assumptions, and then they will criticize or insult based on what they heard without going through the whole content.
Of course.
Which is nowadays how we consume things, right? And there was so much hate in the comments coming from Muslims that it made me rethink the whole thing. Like, I'm putting so much effort into this and I'm working so hard to serve the ummah, and this is what I get in exchange. It's like no compassion, no understanding, no desire to be open to someone thinking differently from you. It was almost like there was no, it was very superficial in the way of consuming the content. And honestly, it hurt me. There were days where I didn't want to post anymore. And I did that. I did that for a few weeks. I stopped posting content. So there were times where it was difficult and I just wanted to give up. But then coming back to the why and thinking about all the women that are actually getting something positive from this. And my business coach taught me to ask myself the right questions. Am I doing something that goes against what Allah is pleased with? No. Am I doing something positive? Yes. Is it normal to get hate? It's part of the game. 100%. It is part of the game. I can't do anything about it. I am going to get a lot more if I keep on going. It doesn't mean that I'm doing something wrong. It's quite the opposite, actually.
The more people you reach, the more people you're upset. And those people that you upset are not your concern.
That's true. Yeah.
Let them go.
I'm not working for them.
You're not.
I might actually help them eventually by opening their mind to a different way of seeing the world. Because what I do is mainly talk about the concerns of Muslim women nowadays, and a lot of people just want to stay like this. They don't want to hear it.
No, they're not ready to hear it.
Yeah.
And I was at a point in my life where I wasn't ready to hear this conversation. But they may remember you in 2 years' time, in 3 years' time, when they are ready to hear it.
Yeah.
So just know that regardless of what people are commenting on anything, the message is still there. And they just might not be in the right place to hear it. And they might never be in the right place to hear it. And that's okay.
And then there's the woman who is feeling lonely and who coincidentally stumbles upon a video of me and who feels like she's being seen for the first time in years.
Yes.
And that's the woman I do what I do for.
When you get the messages, I will get messages and someone will say, I feel like you're talking to me. And I'm like, good, because sometimes what I say comes across quite direct. But that's because sometimes what I say is to the point. And if you do feel it, or if you get triggered by it, whichever one it is, maybe you need to be hearing that. You know? What advice would you give to the woman right now, sat on the sofa, at home, thinking, I wish I could have the confidence to maybe learn to better myself, or to sit and do a podcast, or to build a business, but that's not me. I'm not clever like that. What message do you have for her?
Confidence is a myth when you're starting off. It's not something that you're born with. It's something that you need to put in the work to get. And the only way you're going to do that is by trusting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The only confidence you need at the beginning is the confidence that He's going to make things happen for you. And then once you step outside of your comfort zone and you take a small leap of faith into doing something that you don't usually do. And it can be something as simple as talking to a stranger at the bus stop. Start with something small. Once you do that and you prove to yourself that, okay, Allah can give me the strength to do things I'm not comfortable with, just keep on going. Yeah. Keep on going. Keep on doing it.
Just start. Is always my advice. Just start. Even if that first step is tiny, take it. Because if you don't take it, the only guarantee you have is that you will fail. You have the guarantee. If you're not going to make any effort and you're not going to start, you will fail. But if you start, even if it's just a little tiny step, you're one step closer. And then be consistent. Keep that growing, because with that comes confidence. And I think a lot of people mistake motivation as well as being the reason why they don't start. They see other people and they're like, I don't know how they're so motivated all the time. You know, the amount of times people will say to me, Khadijah, how do you do it? Like, you've got kids, you run a business, you train, like you're doing all these other things. How do you do that? Well, I've made it a priority. First of all, it is my priority of something that I want to work on. But I stay consistent in it. Once I start something, I will stay consistent in it until I see results. And it's not until you've had the consistency, you've improved your skill set because you've been consistent, you've started to see results, that you then become motivated to do more of it. Your why can be as strong as you like. But if you don't do all the other bits in between and you never get to any results, your why will eventually wear off. So you have got to start, you have got to be consistent. You then improve organically because we learn through mistakes. And if you can find somebody to guide you and shortcut you there, and you get a mentor and you invest in yourself, you will shortcut to those results as well. You said that do you have a mentor at the moment? Do you have mentors? Is this something that you have?
Yeah, I have a business coach that I talk to every week. And you know how it is when you do business mentorship, it's not just about business.
No.
It's everything. So she keeps me on track with everything in my life, especially my mindset.
Yeah.
And as someone who has struggled with anxiety for years, I like to ask myself a single question when I'm struggling. It's, what's the worst that can happen? I fail, so what? I'll start again. I had so many businesses before this one.
Yeah.
People see me and they see what I have today without seeing the amount of failures that I went through before that. And I'm still failing every day, but I love it. Because without failure, there's no learning.
Without failure, there's no learning. 100%. And if you're too scared to even try, then you've already lost.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice on anything that we've spoke about or anything you would like to say?
The main thing that I want to leave people with is always hold on to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more than you hold on to anything else, because He's eternal. Everything is gonna vanish except from Him. So if you want success in this life, just cultivate a great relationship with Him based on love first and foremost.
I will leave your link in the description of this. Barakallah fiki, an absolute pleasure to speak with you. Sisters, please follow Soumaya, the healed sister, and work on yourselves because you deserve to be the best version of yourself.
100%. Thank you so much, Khadijah.
My pleasure. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.